looking at what's happening tomorrow, where would you say Corpus Christi is at in terms of just how we have a level of equality for everyone, especially the black community here in Corpus Christi? In my experience, it seems like it's small, but it definitely exists.
I think Corpus Christi does an outstanding job in, especially among our city leaders, including the first responders, our police department, as well as the city council and others. Corpus Christi seems to always want to listen to black concerns, such as being sure that blacks are hired, and also being sure that blacks are in offices, and also in ensuring that blacks are heard, because so many times in other places it may not be like that. But we have a new mayor now, Mayor Guajardo, but I work closely with Mayor Guajardo and the city council prior to the pandemic. And I'm sure that she will continue to do as she's always done, making herself available to the community, just as a police chief has done, Chief Mike Markle. He has, to me, extended himself way above and beyond the call to try to ensure that there is equality for all. There is justice, but then the justice is done in the right way. So that's how I look at Corpus Christi, and I say that I'm proud to be a citizen of Corpus Christi, Texas. And I do realize a lot of times as a black person, when you go to the malls and you look in the stores and you look in the businesses and restaurants, wherever you go, there is a lack of blacks. But I think one of the reasons, as a matter of fact, the reason is simply because of the black population. I don't believe we're even 5%. I think it's somewhere around 4.8% of blacks. And then when I look at in our school systems where I came from, the hires on some staffs, it's not much. And in particular, I'm speaking of CCISD right now because that's where I came out of. And you don't see a lot of blacks. I think as far as black counselors, I don't even think that there's 8. But again, it's numbers. But I just believe that must be a continued effort to get blacks in, because I think that kids, minorities, I think that they would love to see someone whose skin is just like their skin. They would love to see someone who perhaps may understand even some of the dialect in terms of communicating. I think that would be most appreciative. And especially the parents, when they're coming in and going out on campuses, I think that it would be a great kind of situation if we had more blacks in the hospitals working or in school, wherever. It makes a difference.
You mentioned your education and you personally went to CCISD. Is it fair to say that you were almost born here, Reverend?
No, I was actually born in a little place by the name called Taylor, Texas. Moved to Corpus Christi at the age of 6, but I spent a number of years here in Corpus Christi. I was on, I ran track at Roy Miller High School. I think I went to I was kind of like the third or fourth year of integration. So I'm very familiar with integration, and I can say that while I was there at Miller High School, we had a phenomenal time. There were 3 separate races: Hispanics, Anglos, and blacks. But we were like a family. Rarely was there any type of situation where blacks were called names. There were not too many black-white fights or black-Hispanic fights. And as a matter of fact, Royal Miller High School is the first school in the state of Texas in 1961 to win a state football championship with 3 distinct races of people. Our coach was Pete Regis.
No kidding. Was he a white coach?
Yes, he was a white coach.
And that didn't matter.
And it didn't matter. And by the way, Coach Regis still comes to Corpus Christi from time to time when we have special occasions. And he still comes.
Sounds like there's still a relationship there.
Oh, Coach Regis is the best.
When you mentioned how there are probably less than 5% of the black community in Corpus Christi, how important was it to you to be able to have some sort of someone to look up to who did have the same color of your skin?
Who did or who didn't?
Who did? Like, did you have anyone like that, or maybe did you only see that at a church or something?
Well, when I went to elementary, because and junior high school, well, actually, with high school, junior high school, there were quite a few. Well, the school was black, and so I had a lot of blacks in my early life in Corpus Christi, and a lot of my mentors actually come from Booker T. Washington and Solomon Coles. And so I still remember some of their teachings, and I still remember how those black teachers were so insistent and persistent that we would grow up being respectful. They were persistent and insistent that we would get an education. And that still lingers on with me. And as a matter of fact, I developed some of my teaching habits, kind of sort of from the way that those teachers did. When I went to Northside and Miller High School, I did not have any black teachers. And so, as a matter of fact, I don't think we had a black teacher, because I graduated in 1962 from Roy Miller High School, and there were no black teachers. There were just black students, but no black teachers. But the teachers were very good. The teachers were very respectful to all of us. I ran track at Miller High School, as a matter of fact, and our coaches were just outstanding. And one of the events, and I never will forget, was whenever we would go out of town to San Antonio or to the Valley or Victoria, or wherever we would go, I remember I didn't understand what was going on at the time, but the coach would get off the bus whenever we would roll into a new town. And the coach would tell us, "All right, boys, you stay on the bus." So we stayed on the bus, and we're just talking and having a lot of fun. Then he would come back and tell the bus driver, "Let's go on down the street." Again, we're not knowing what's happening. Then you get to another place, like, for example, a restaurant or a hotel. Get to the next place, and Coach would tell us again, repeat the same thing. He would do this about 3 or 4 times in most cases. Then he'd come back and say, all right, boys, you can get off now. Again, we're being naive and just high school boys and having a great time and enjoying the trip, talking about one another, friendly talk. But later on in life, I realized what the coach was doing. He was getting off the bus to go and see if the black athletes would be accepted at the restaurant or in the hotel or / motel areas, and protecting us from racial cries.
Why do you think Coach kept that from you?
More than likely, probably just didn't want to alert us, And integration was still, still fairly new. And so I'm believing, because I also coached in school, and good coaches will do everything that they can to protect their athletes from harm or anything that may be perceived as something harmful. So I think it was a matter of protection, a matter of security, and wanted to be sure that we were not alerted or frightened by any type of situation. It worked out very well because no one ever told us you couldn't eat here. Or no one ever said, well, those boys right there can't stay here. So it worked out well for us.
Absolutely. Sometimes it's best to keep someone within
Yes.
the bubble because whether high school or not, you're still developing yourself as a person and you're not really conscious of those kind of things.
No.
It sounds like, you found that out only later in life, but were there ever any points that, and I don't ever want to put words in your mouth, but was there ever any point where you realized that maybe, you have it pretty good in Corpus Christi in terms of the level of respect? The fact that winning team was able to be, 3 races and, there were never any issues. Do you think that just speaks to maybe the city makeup is just unique, or it just doesn't really matter?
Personally, I would love to see more blacks here because what basically happens is once our high school kids graduate, they make a max exodus to Houston or San Antonio or Dallas. It's a mass exodus. And so, and they don't come back. They only come back to visit their parents or other relatives. And I would that there would be more openings for blacks, but then another reason why they don't come back is because the pay scale is a lot different working in Corpus Christi and being a teacher than it is working in Dallas or Houston and being a teacher or a coach or a principal or even a nurse. It's a lot, the pay is so different. So a lot of it, and it's not just our black kids, it's other kids as well that leave because of the pay. But then for blacks, it's more difficult to find jobs here than it is for the other races.
You mentioned before the pandemic that you yourself had a working relationship with Paulette Guajardo before she was elected mayor, and whether it's Macomb or Guajardo, they both kind of made it
Yes.
a point that they want the city to be more inviting and to keep our young people here. They've never spoken specifically to race, but that's something the city's been made, at least saying they're taking efforts on, and that takes a lot of city development. And I never want to talk to you about what do you want to see fixed in Corpus Christi. I mean, sure you can answer that if you'd like, but it sounds like would you say that maintaining that sort of communication with city leaders and making sure black voices are heard is something that you think needs to.
Yeah, that's crucial here. I know that our city manager, prior to the pandemic, I've seen so many new faces, so many new hires from our new city manager, and a lot of those faces are black faces. And I've been here for numerous years. I've never seen as many black persons working at City Hall as I do now. And I think a lot has to do with our city manager, Pete Sonoy. And it makes a huge difference. The city council have always been good listeners. Mayor McComb, he was phenomenal. And the thing about the city that I really enjoy is if you attend enough of the meetings, they'll know you on first name basis. And when they see you away from the crowd or away from City Hall, they continue to speak to you and recognize you. So it's not just when I'm at City Hall, I'm the mayor or I'm a city council person, but even when they're away from the place, they continue to have that rapport, continue to have that relationship. The same with the police officers. In particular, Chief Markle has just done a phenomenal job. I know that the fire captain, Chief Rocher, he has done all that he can to try to recruit, as well as Chief Markle, try to recruit blacks to be a part of either the fire department or the police department. So I know that they do a phenomenal job. School districts, they do the same thing. And so that's the good thing. But again, when you're dealing with numbers, there are only so many.
We've been speaking mainly to the city of Corpus Christi itself, but this is a very odd time in history where I feel like at my age, things that were supposed to be said and done and laid to rest have just been revitalized and brought back, and it's there's some really hurtful wounds that I've been able to see based off of whether you're looking at body camera footage of police officers in other major cities. I'm not sure how old Dr. King would be, if I'd be honest with you, if he's still alive today. But if he was to take a real assessment of our country right now, do you think he would understand, or do you think there would be a level of disappointment? Because we're also very divided at this point.
I think Dr. King, it wouldn't be a little disappointment. I think Dr. King would truly be disappointed, as most Americans are. And as you alluded to, the divisiveness that we now see, it saddens me to see this. What we saw on last Wednesday, 2 weeks ago, was one of the saddest. Matter of fact, it may have been the saddest thing that I have seen other than the 911. To see people, Americans, want to come in or break in to our nation's capital and to harm people and even kill people because of their choice, which Dr. Martin Luther King was one of the main things he talked about, is the freedom, to have the freedom to vote, to have the freedom to make choices, to have the freedom to not to be intimidated because you voted against an issue. It's sad. And I spoke this morning, what do you do when you fall off the wall? And I related to the story of Humpty Dumpty. And I think that one of the greatest things that we have to remember, in spite of all of this that is going on, all of this unhappiness, all of the violence that continues to go on here in America, throughout this nation, we have to keep in mind that God can and He will, in spite of what's happening now, He will put the pieces of America's life back together. It's going to take prayer. It's going to take effort. It's going to take a whole lot of love. Love for the country. Love for one another. It's going to take a whole lot of trust. And I think perhaps Dr. King would say, am I my brother's keeper? Yes, we are our brother's keepers. And it's going to be up to your generation, my kids' generation, the younger side, to help get this country back on track and stop disrespecting each other because of the color of their skin and not the content of their character. I think Dr. King would encourage all of us as Americans and the nation, but in particular America, as we are about to have the 46th president of the United States of America. I think he would urge all of us to be patient, to have trust, and let's give Joe Biden a chance to unite this country. Let's give Kamala Harris a chance to bring this nation together and work on one accord. I believe that from the Bible, we walk by faith and not by sight. So what we're going to have to do as Americans as we move to the new president is to walk by faith and do the right thing. And if we're going to confront COVID-19, we're going to have to abide by the mask wearing rule. And by the way, I don't have my mask on, but I have it right here. One of the reasons why, the reason why that I don't have it on is because it's very difficult for a person to understand what I'm saying with the mask on. Otherwise, I would have it on right now, because I just think that we're going to have to continue to follow those rules and follow what the doctor says to do.
Well, like we said, we're definitely 6 feet apart, and we're taking all the precautions, and that's truly all I have for you.
Thank you.
Axel. Is there anything else you'd want to add?
Thank you for this interview on today. It's been a very comfortable time with you. I felt relieved to do it, felt honored to do it, yet relieved. I just want our nation, the nation, to pray for unity. In 3 days, we don't know what the future is going to hold. But in 3 days, I pray that there will be no violence. That we will do as Dr. King in Dr. King's dream, for us to walk together, hold hands, and walk down the street, regardless to what color. Just like when they did the Black Lives Matters marches. That has been one of the greatest things that ever happened. I was so glad to see, I mentioned young people, those young black athletes, taking a stand. People like Steve Kerr, the Golden State Warriors coach, Popovich, the San Antonio Spurs coach, taking a stand and speaking out. That's a great feeling when you see unity and others that say, enough is enough. Let's get our country back on track.